Even if you go today to an airport and I have this Michigan t-shirt that's become my airport look now, and I go there and I'll hear like at least 5 people come and say go blue from somewhere. That's just the spirit of the school, that it likes people who like to be engaged, like to be connected, and like to help each other out. New York as a location, I feel does not attract that much travel because most of the big clients, their head offices, or at least some sort of office are in New York. So it's just going from one borough to the other at max is what's going to happen. But I do see a lot of people coming from like Boston, Washington, Philly, depending on, because most of the clients' head offices are here. So a lot of people do fly into New York, but New York has lesser travel. I think that was another good reason for me to be picking this. I did not want to do the Monday through Thursday on a plane life.
Welcome to another episode of Crack the MBA show. Our guest today is Aanchal Gupta. Aanchal is a consultant at BCG in their New York office. She recently graduated with an MBA from Ross School of Business, where she was awarded the prestigious Dean's Fellow Merit-Based Full Tuition Scholarship. Aanchal originally hails from India and prior to pursuing her MBA, worked for 4 years at Fidelity Investments as a data scientist. During her time at Fidelity, Aanchal managed machine learning-based solutions lifecycle across various business units and also acquired a US patent for one of her solutions. Aanchal completed her undergraduate degree in computer science and engineering at MNIT Jaipur, where she was a merit scholar and student placement coordinator. Aanchal has always been actively engaged in extracurricular activities, most recently being a peer coach, student ambassador, and being involved with Consulting Club, Indian Student Business Association, Community Consulting Club, and Michigan Code Academy at Ross. Welcome, Aanchal. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Nopur. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, pleasure. Aanchal, why don't we start out with a fun fact? Could you share a fun fact with us?
You send me this questionnaire and business school asks you a question a lot of times like this, and I've sort of come away from it. But I think one of the things I like to tell about is I did a national park trip where I covered national parks across like 9 US states in about 15 days. And my first hike was into Grand Canyon, which I could not imagine I would be ever doing it, but that was it.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Was this part of a trip while you were at Ross?
Yeah, after graduation, post-grad.
Oh, so your
Yeah.
graduation trip, so to speak.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
fun. Did you go with like a bunch of folks? Yeah. Super, super. Amazing. So, Anshul, before we get into questions on admissions and your MBA experiences, I would love to hear a little bit more on the personal side of things. If you could share about some of the habits you've had that have led to your successes in various areas, right? Like you've held scholarships, fellowships, at both the places you went to college, as well as MBA school, getting a job with BCG in a rough environment. So, some of those things would really like to know what are those winning habits which have led to such successes?
I think something I would not know when it started, but my parents were always very encouraging towards being a part of every kind of competition I could ever think of, be it whatever field I could think of. And it starts from participating. Once you start winning something, I think you get the taste of it. And that's when you just get into it that I like doing this. And that's what happened. But another thing that I think, I don't know from whom it comes to me, but just organizing things. We were talking before this. I'm OCD about cleaning, but then having my stuff organized all the time in terms of checklist and what do I need to do by when, and also giving myself some buffer time that I've learned over the years. I think those help me just maintain everything that I want to get done in the right time.
Okay, that's super. And I can totally imagine those skills being really useful at business school as well as in consulting, right?
Yep, 100%. Like business school could be so overwhelming because there's so much to do every single day. And you have to be really cautious of where you're spending your time because you just keep looking at it and your 2 years are just gone. And you're like, what did I really do here? So you have to be really cautious with your time. I think that's one of the biggest learnings for me out of business school.
Right. And since we're on the topic, how are you going about using your habits nicely to plan your time while you were at business school? Was there something special or different you were doing?
I think I had a good sense of what were the different kinds of activities at business school before I even joined, like what kinds of clubs I would want to be a part of, what kind of activities or events or flagship competitions that I would want to do. So I came knowing that in mind. I knew what were the timelines for those, like what time of the year do they happen. So something like there's a CEO leadership contest that happens in spring of a year. So I want to be prepared that my spring is for that kind of event versus I wanted to just lead the Indian Business Club in terms of the events. So I knew that's my second year work. So first year is more towards recruiting. Those kinds of things I'd already planned out in terms of my 2-year timeline. I'm sorry, I'm jumping between places here. But I think that helped me know that no, I cannot do this today because I have to do this kind of thing tomorrow. So that just helps you plan it out better.
Okay, that's really insightful. I'm guessing you developed that clarity through conversations you had with students.
Oh, definitely. I think your seniors are your best bet at knowing. So when I was applying to business school, I actually ended up talking to like 10, 15 people, everybody pursuing a very different kind of activity at Ross because there's always something that you can do, no matter how different you are. So I knew like those kinds of things they were available and what did I want to do. And I think that's the same thing I tell my juniors too, that you come with a different personality, you want to do something different. Do not get into the FOMO zone that everybody talks about because it is very real. You want to concentrate, be laser focused on what you came to get out of this experience because you're spending so much money, spending so much time away from family. So just do what you came to do.
Yeah, no, that's such an important tip. And I think that probably explains why you ended up doing so well in different areas of the business school experience as well. And we'll talk about some of these things more later. I just want to move back into the chronology and maybe go to the starting point of, when did you decide to pursue an MBA and why?
To be honest, MBA was not on my radar, not in terms of doing an international one. It wasn't, it feels so much more common now that I have done it. But at the time I was doing, I had no one in my vicinity that was actually going to pursue it. So I was actually thinking like a master's in data science or something like that, just to explore. I wanted to get a global experience. And that's why I was considering a master's abroad. And it was actually my manager who felt that an MBA was better suited because of how I was liking the business at the firm, how I was interacting with people, how I was enjoying creating solutions, but also thinking about where is the problem coming from. He was someone who really pushed me to think that you should talk to some MBA folks, see if you like their experience more than something like masters. And I think 1.5 years prior to when I applied was when it started. I started talking to people and I liked the experience. I liked what it was offering, and that's how it came to be.
Okay, fair. And what attracted you to Ross specifically, Achal?
I think anybody that you ask this question from Ross, they will always say it's the people, and it will always be the people. It is such a big people focused school that they are just nice, warm, friendly, and it attracts a certain kind of people to themselves. I think every school has its own personality, and Ross is in terms of being, you can say I'm happy talking about it. You will always find alumni happy talking about their school experiences, and that's just the kind of school it is. I think I related, I felt I could be myself. I would enjoy being a part of this community. I would learn new things, but I would also be able to do what I do good. So that just brought me to Ross.
Okay, you said that it attracts a certain kind of person, right? So, what is that type?
It's coming down to the question of what are admissions folks looking into it. But I think it's about people who are genuinely interested in working with other kinds of people. So it's a very collaborative school if we think about it. You are always expected to be working in groups of people. You will be leaders in teams, yes, but you know how to manage them. You also know how to work with them, and you can also be an independent contributor at the same time. So just enjoying that and being open to so many new experiences, because Ross provides so many more experiential learning opportunities, right? I know we'll maybe talk about it later too, but just being open to so many new experiences and not being afraid to bring your whole self in terms of whether you're the chirpy kind, whether you are even the introvert kind, but like certain kinds of activities and happy with certain kinds of people. I think that's just what the vibe is. Like, even if you go today to an airport and I have this Michigan t-shirt that's become my airport look now, and I go there and I'll hear like at least 5 people come and say, go blue from somewhere. That's just the spirit of the school, that it likes people who like to be engaged, like to be connected, and like to help each other out.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That is, I should buy a Michigan shirt.
You should. I can get you one.
Okay, awesome. I'll take you up on that. Super. All right. Coming to the essays, right? How did you approach your Ross essays? What are those 2 or 3 stories that allowed you to shine, specifically as Ross allows for very limited real estate?
Yeah, I think those 3 short stories took so much time for me, because every time I would think about something, I'd be like, no, maybe I could think something better on this. I think one of the first things I did was write down everything, every possible kind of story I could think of throughout my life that has made some kind of impact, maybe professionally, maybe personally, brought me a certain kind of skill, was a little kind of achievement. Because at times we tend to overlook things that we have done that might be very small in our eyes. We are like, this is regular work for me, or I could, like, anybody could have done it, but like anybody does not do it. So just thinking about all of those things, jotting them down, and then walking through with my parents, friends, whoever could understand what have I done, who am I, and which story made the most sense. I think that helped me a lot in choosing which of those three go into those short 100 words.
Okay. Could you share one of the stories which you used?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I used to do at Fidelity was sort of self-created, but it became a group in itself where all the newcomers that are joining every year from colleges, are called into a separate pool called Leaps. So I just started doing like this study session kind of thing for them, which became like a learning pillar for them, where you do like AWS type preparation classes if you want to do some sort of certification. There's like peer-to-peer learning sessions where I'm bringing people from so many different categories who have done something good in their fields and just talking about it to peers. So that felt like maybe a small thing to me, but when I think about it, it was pretty good to have done something like that. I think that became one of my stories in there. So yeah.
Okay, that's neat. That's really cool. Yeah, actual career goals, that's something that schools often ask for. Ross asks for career goals as well. So,
Hmm.
what process did you follow to identify your career goals? And what advice do you have for applicants looking to identify their true north?
I think there are two facets to it that need to come together when anybody's deciding. One is what's your aspiration, and one is what's the practicality of achieving something like that. So if you're not coming something like an entrepreneurial background, but you say, oh, my short-term goal is to be becoming an entrepreneur in India as an international student, I think nobody's going to buy it. So something very practical was what I was thinking about, but also aligns with what do I really want to do. So I liked business aspects of things. I loved financial industries, wanted to explore more, not just being limited to one company at a time, if that makes sense, but be able to see what's happening in the whole landscape. And that somehow became my short-term goal of where can I see this? And consulting came up as a very easy, viable option where I can get to work with different kinds of clients, even across industries if I have to, working on some financial angles for them. And that's how I came to that. Long term was an entrepreneurial kind of spirit that I keep. And that made sense to me to be able to say that I don't have that experience today, but you as a school provide me these kinds of opportunities. I learn with you. And maybe when I get my consulting experience, I have some network in the industry, I will go on to do something like that. So that just made sense as a story. So I think from a practicality perspective, candidates should always be seeing a school wants to keep people who will be able to get good employments out of them, right? So it needs to be in line with your aspirations, but then also needs to be practical. So they should always be looking out for, if this is your career you want to pursue after business school, are there people already in the school that have got certain roles with the companies you want to work with the kind of clients you want to work with? Is that even practical coming out of it? And that helps you sort down what makes sense, what does not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What weaknesses in your candidacy did you successfully overcome through your MBA applications?
I think my first GMAT score was horrible when I started with it. I prepped for it. I kept manifesting it. Let me start from the beginning. Like, I got the books, I kept manifesting it for how many months, procrastinating. Should I give it? Should I not give it? And I was like, you get multiple tries, let me give it. Maybe I am at a good position, but the mocks do really tell you how well you're doing in it. I think everybody should abide by improving on them one by one. Like, they're not just to be given all together at a time, because those scores really are what you end up performing on your exam day. So I got a 700 and I was like, this is not getting me anywhere to where I want to be. And then I started again and that COVID had hit at that time. And I was sort of thinking between, I was in Bangalore, do I move home or not? How do studies happen right now? And work from home was also a disaster at that time. People were working too long. So I was like, how will I now ever get time again to study for another GMAT attempt and then go on to writing my essays? And also my parents did not know what I was thinking in terms of doing an MBA. This was not like a discussed goal that I had. And so they were also surprised when I came home and I'm like, I'm studying from GMAT. I'm going to apply for an MBA. I'm going to go next year. And they were like, okay, where did this come from? We did not know about this. So I'm losing the thought of the question. But I think studied again for GMAT, got to a 7:30, which I was still not 100% satisfied. I was like, I could have pushed it to a 7:40, 7:50. I did even give it again a third try, but I would not recommend like going beyond it. I know you get 8 tries, but do not go beyond 3 tries unless you're like really improving. So then I settled with that and got into Ross.
Okay, very cool. Interviews are a really important part of the process as well, right? So, actually, do you have any advice to excel in the MBA interviews?
I think what they're really looking for is your genuine interest in the school at that moment, because most of them are alumni or second year students that are really interviewing you. So they are in the spirit of the school, they love the school. And I think people can feel when you're faking it about the school versus when you really like it. Like, really know the school, even if you don't like it, if it's not your best school, really know the school in and out of what is it that you would specifically want to do there, like whose experiences you have heard that really impacts you and wants to make you a contributor to the school in terms of its growth, in terms of its community and everything around it, because that's what school value. So I think just being genuine, being really truthful, and knowing the school well, doing your homework well, I think that's a good interviewing skill, I would think.
Right. If you look back at all the people you've interviewed, and maybe somebody really stands out. So, what was it about them? Like, or is there anything in particular you could specifically share so that people can relate to it even more?
So I haven't interviewed anybody yet. So maybe my interview that I was having with different schools, I think, and it has a common theme. But for Ross specifically, when I was talking to the alum, I researched them, like what's on LinkedIn about them. Where can I see he was related to? So Indian Business Club, yes. Had done some kind of conference that I was interested in, yes. So I found common grounds of, oh, I really know the school, that this is a kind of conference you did. Maybe you can talk about your experience so that I can learn what can I do when I get in there. And then there were certain kinds of courses that I knew. So CEO's class is a big course at Ross. I knew I had to take it. So I was like, I'm trying to do like a virtual class of this. I've heard a lot about it. Have you done this course? What do you recommend? And then that follows into the leadership challenge that I was following you about. So I was like, oh, I'm also interested in that. I've seen you have done that. How was your experience going through this, right? So picking out very specific things to also connect with your interviewer, no matter, even if you're going into consulting, recruiting, those kinds of interviews, business school, anything that you go, I think that really tells them that you're genuinely interested in knowing. So I think that helped me build that connection over there.
Okay, so some LinkedIn sleuthing skills are helpful as well.
Definitely.
Amazing. All right, and you touched upon this a little bit, Aanchal. Maybe if there's anything else you'd want to add here, which is what is the admissions committee looking for in its evaluation process?
I would say you start with attending events. So you don't want to be like asking the questions all the time and shining too much light on yourself, but you are there in some of the events. You don't have to go to all of them, but you have to be there somewhere, being showing your presence and being interested in the school. Like I saw one girl when I was doing some of these events, she would be there in every single event, and every admissions officer seemed to know her name. I was like, how's that happening? Like, but I don't want people to be doing that. That's not really necessary. But being interested, going to some of those events, and then talking to students, because students sometimes can also push your name forward to the admissions committee just as a referral, maybe if they liked having an interaction with you. But those have to be organic and you work on them over time. But then talking to students is your next step. Attending some of the classes, maybe that gives you an edge to say, I really know what the experience you're trying to give me at class. I understand what it's that I'm signing up for. So maybe that helps you even further. And then with regards to your application, because Ross is it gives you a very tight word limit. So you want to make sure every single word that you're using, somebody explain it to me, like it's a very costly piece of real estate that you're using. And you want to be able to put every single word that's adding to your candidacy, like no and was wasting your space in there. So be very careful of what kind of experiences you want to put, which are genuine, which really reflect the different colors of your personality. Do not be afraid to be showing those. Like I had one guy in one of the events who had 150 pigeons and he used to do races of them. Like that was his thing. And as weird as it might sound, but if that's what makes you happy, that's what you write about, right? So just be bringing yourself completely in that application. And then through your interviews, I think that just whole cycle of maintaining a good communication, showing good interest, genuinely knowing about the school, talking to people, I think that just gets you there.
Okay, super, super helpful. And Achal, can you share a little bit about what aspects of your application and candidacy led you to securing the Dean's Fellow Merit Based Scholarship?
I get asked this, and I think it's a black box that nobody knows how the admissions is deciding all of these things. But I think one of the things that really helped, and I wouldn't have thought of it unless somebody told me, is Ross gives you like an optional essay portion. So most of the schools, what they do is it's only some sort of extenuating circumstances or something that's a question mark on your application is what you get to explain in those. But Ross gives you a more open-ended one where you can literally be writing about anything and everything. It's not a red flag answer only. And that's what I ended up using to add another leadership story of mine that I was talking about, helping people with their learning journeys and everything. And I got like 200 words to be able to do that. So I think that I felt was a very good decision and might have helped in showing I bring these skills. I know how to bring people together. And maybe this is something I can do at Ross was one of the things. I had a really good interview. Like I really connected with the guy, had a lot of fun interviewing, had questions that he had done and he could speak, and people always like to talk about themselves. So I was able to ask him questions that he really liked answering. So I think I liked the interview as well. And then I just got lucky.
Phenomenal. Thanks. That's a great tip, by the way, about the optional essay. So really appreciate that. All right. So with that, would love to move to some Ross questions as well. Let's talk about the MBA experience. So actually, you talked about the people aspect, teamwork, right? And that's something we really hear about Ross. Aside from that, what in your view is Ross's unique identity? Where does Ross really shine?
I would want to say the people, but I think the location also helps it a lot because it's this cute little town that nobody would ever themselves think of visiting in the US. Like you were like, why would somebody want to go to Michigan and then a small town called Ann Arbor, if not for the university? It's its own bubble. Whatever 12, 14-mile radius, whatever that town is, that's all you have for those 2 years to be doing it. Like you eat there, you live there, you dream there, you work there. That's all that there is for those 2 years. So you're naturally bound in some ways to be talking to people, making those connections and getting those experiences because those 400 people are so diverse from each other, bring so many different backgrounds and experiences that you get so much time, if you manage it well, to be able to talk to them, to be able to grow so much. And I think that is really one of the key aspects that makes the school unique, besides being so much focused. And I think that also helps bring that people's aspect into picture. Like that's why people love each other so much and want to help each other because that's what they've learned to do in this 2 years. That's all they can do that they're there. So it just gets ingrained that this is what I want to do for the school. Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we also see that in some of the schools which have such locations. Recently we were talking to somebody and they were talking about Tuck being such a location as well, for
Hmm.
example. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
what you're saying, that makes a lot of sense.
And then I think added to that is also there are 40,000 students across different kinds of departments that you can think of, like computer science to literature to arts to neuroscience to I don't know what not. And Ross gives you this opportunity to be taking courses with them. Like some amount of electives is what's free for you to be taking in any kind of school that you want to. So I know friends who took like music classes. They were learning guitars in their second years. And that was just amazing to me. And then there are competitions where you are put on teams with people from different schools. So I did one, the FinTech Challenge, and I was put with like two undergrads from computer science department that I would have never thought of ever meeting them. And they were such cute children that I loved working with them. So I think these experiences also add on to it because it's such a vast university with every possible kind of elective subjective that you can think of, that you get to meet those people somewhere down the road in those 2 years.
Nice. And is it common for Ross MBAs to collaborate with people from other schools? For example, the engineering school and other schools as well?
I think it's a lot about being consciously using your time in your electives. Definitely, it's not a forced upon thing that you have to be doing something like this. But then I think most of the people do end up. A lot of people take up dual degrees with, say, School of Public Policy, That's a very common one. School of Sustainability. That's another common one. A lot of people end up doing that after they get into Ross. And then there are competitions throughout the year that Tech Club does. That's like Business Jam, which is bringing in technology and business together, bringing in finance and business together. So that brings in people from very different schools to be there in these competitions, I think. So it's pick and choose where you want to spend your time, but there are ample opportunities to be doing it.
Okay, super. What are the flagship events through the year?
I want to start with Diwali. I think that's one of the biggest attended dance competition slash Diwali celebration that we have. Like 400-ish people from like different backgrounds and different universities and whatnot attend. So that's like a very big event that I loved dancing both the years in that. So that's one. The CEO's challenge that I was talking about, that happens spring every year, where you're put in front of a business problem. You have 2 days to work with a team that's randomly assigned to you. You work through the business problem as the C-suite. So everybody gets a role in terms of being a CEO, CTO, CMO, whatever. And then you get in front of a board of directors. They ask you questions, you answer them, you give your speech on, oh, this happened, but we think this is how it's going to go. This is how I think the numbers are going to run. This is how I think the business solution is going to be. And then top two teams go on to compete in front of real press. They're press members sitting and they're asking you questions. So I was the CEO on the winning team and I was literally shivering when I was answering those questions. But it's just so much fun. It is such a high to be able to get that most real experience ever. I don't know if I'm ever going to be a CEO and be standing in front of press to be answering. I hope I do, but that gave me that experience of what's going to happen. What do I need to do to be prepared for it? And what a nice feeling that is to be able to do such things. So I think that's another one. And then there are many, like there's a fintech challenge, there's a data challenge, and then every club keeps having their own flagship events across the year. So Brazilian have their big barbecue that we do at a very big garden park that we have in Ann Arbor. So pretty much everybody is there at that time. We have the winter gala, which is like the prom version of what we hear in undergrad. So that was a very good experience. Again, I've never done that in India. So that was very good to go to. These come to mind at the first go.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like there's so much to do.
Yeah.
Sounds really exciting as well.
Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. And you talked about this a little bit, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to add here. How does the Ann Arbor location enhance the Ross experience? And I don't know, maybe if there's any favorite restaurants or haunts that you've had, maybe you could name them as well.
I used to be very much stuck. So we have this one building that's fully furnished. So it's very suitable for internationals to be staying in. So if you can think about it, it's like a 10-minute walk from Ross. You have 40 Indians staying in that building, and it's like undergrad all over again, where everybody is at everybody's house in the night and cooking together and eating together. So I think I really love that place. I had made like a cute little room for myself, set it up. That was something. But Ann Arbor has these cute little coffee joints all across town. Like people just use it, students primarily use it to just like get a coffee and just sit there and work. And it's so beautiful outside. And you just keep seeing people coming in and going. And I think I liked spending some time there. My roommate introduced me to start doing it. But then we had a dog in the house too. So one of my roommates had it. And I think I just like to sit with him in the evening and just relax and have like a hot cup of hot chocolate. That used to be a good thing that I did. I've spent a lot of time even in the Ross building. I think it's such a good infrastructure, such good technology that we get. So craftily or creatively created sitting spaces of different kinds that you can find, that it's just good to sit there, study, meet, talk to people, have these coffee chats and stuff. I think that's another one of my cute little things I like there.
Okay, very nice. You've painted such a nice picture that it sort of makes me want to go there again. Yeah, I had an opportunity to visit in 2018, and really, it's fantastic. It's superb.
That's great. Yeah. Did you
Uh,
go during summers or winters?
Summers, June.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's the best time, I
yeah,
think.
we had Sujin and Diana
Yeah.
programming it. They're fantastic.
Yeah. I think that women's energy in the first session that I ever attended was what was like, oh, I want to be like her. I want to talk like her, and I want to be so excited of what I'm doing that she's really amazing. I really love her. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So also want to talk about the clubs that you've been involved with, Aanchal. So maybe we can start out with the consulting club and the activities that they have. and then move on to, say, the Community Consulting Club, the Michigan Code Academy also that you've been a part of?
So I think consulting club is probably one of the most structured ones, if you can think about it. Is so Ross thinks of clubs in three different categories, as would most of the schools. So professional clubs is what helps you get into recruiting different types of industries. So consulting, investment banking, technology, those kinds of variants. Then there's social clubs, which are like activities like hiking, outdoors, wine club, book club, games club, things like those. And then there are affinity clubs in sense of what do you relate to, or what would you like to be connected to. Could be a region, could be community, so Indian business, Brazilian, LGBTQ, those kinds of things in the third group. Consulting club is very well structured and positioned in your professional development section of it, in the sense that it exactly knows week on week, day on day, what do you need to be doing in order to get to that ideal timeline of submitting your application and cracking those interviews with every major consulting firm that you can think of. So I really like that experience. I loved my seniors to be helping throughout my journey. And that's what I thought I wanted to be a part of it in my second year, to be able to give back, to be able to help out people. And so that's what I became a part of. So I was a peer coach, which is MBA tools that take mock interviews, help MBA ones to be preparing their resumes, preparing for interviews and stuff like that. So we dedicate a couple of hours over maybe 20 or 30 hours a week to be able to help them. And that was another thing I was doing through the consulting club. And another thing was just outreaching to companies. So I was the VP of External Relations. I'm forgetting the exact title, but just reaching out to firms to be able to say, these are the kinds of students we have this year. This is our resume book. We have this flagship consulting gala kind of thing where companies came in for 2 days, networked around, talked to people, gave their speeches and stuff. So would you be interested to join in and just increasing that outreach? That was what I was part of at Consulting Club. And then community consulting and data consulting were along the themes of the experiential learning opportunities that Ross does. So these are essentially external companies. So community consulting with work with nonprofits, NGOs, those kinds of things that really help the community. And data consulting, data analytics club is more around, I think there was a project with Domino's that I did where they were trying to do something with analytics on some of their projects. I'm not supposed to be maybe saying the information, but those kinds of things where you actually work with companies in a consulting manner. You understand what the problem is, what are they looking for. You do some sort of expert interviews, build out analysis, analyze some data, give out some recommendations. And it's like a 5 to 6 week engagement that you do, or even all through a semester or half of a semester. And that's what I was engaged with over there.
Very nice. And what about Michigan Code Academy, or was that the data thing that
I think that came to my lab just by luck, because I was a data scientist. I knew Python and I loved talking about it. And there was this classmate of mine was trying to start this club or keeping it alive. So he just came to me. He's like, would you be one of the officers? Would you like to teach something in Python and, do these things? And I was like, yeah, cool. Sounds cool. So I wasn't planning on doing that when I actually started, but it just fell into my lap in second year. And I was surprised how many people wanted to really learn technology in business school. Coming from like an engineering background, I was like, everybody knows this. Like, this is not something that's rocket science that I'm going to teach anybody. And people are like so excited. Oh, I want to do Excel. I want to do Python. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. So that's simple. We can do that. So that's what we were trying to do in there. And then it did a couple of partnerships with the tech club to do some events and consulting clubs to do some trainings and that kinds of things.
Okay, fair. What's the biggest challenge you faced at Ross, Aanchal?
I think that's overwhelming diversity at start. We all talk about, at least in our interviews, that, oh, I want to get a global exposure. I want to get that international feeling. I want to know people from all countries. But you step into with those 400 unknown people that are so different and from so many different backgrounds and countries and beliefs and religions and caste and I don't know what other dimension, that it's like a whole different complex gambit of things that your brain has to unravel, along with the fast timelines that the MBA journey is also moving, because you want to know people, but then there are so many biases that we all come in with, so many different people, because we are not exposed to that as Indians, and any country for that matter across the world. Nobody knows what kinds of experiences people are going through. So it was really a learning to be keeping my mouth shut and just hearing the people out and not forming a bias, trying to unbias myself and starting from start of what your country feels like, what your culture feels like, what kind of food do you eat, what's not okay to be saying to you in your language, what kind of expressions are maybe provoking to you, which are okay in my culture. Just learning these basic nuances to be able to get to know people the next level, I think that was pretty overwhelming, but that's become fun over time, like to be able to do that. It's such a brain opening experience, if I can say that. But that was really overwhelming at the start. I was out of my social energy in like a few months. I was like, I don't want to go out, I don't want to meet new people, I can't do that. But I think the more you get to do it, the more you just appreciate in what your country provides, what your culture provides, and what can you share with them and what can you learn from them.
Nice, nice. You talked about running out of the social steam, right? Like, how does one re-energize themselves when that happens? Because that's very natural.
I just went home a lot. In my first 2 years, I made a couple of India trips whenever I could get that time to recharge. But I think it's also okay to be taking some time with yourself, with your laptops, with your books in your own rooms for some days. I think that's completely fine. And what will also happen is not all 400 are going to become your best friends. You will start to develop that inner circle that supports you, that understands you. That's not going to happen on day one, but gradually, with time, with months, after the recruiting stress is done, and even to share some of that recruiting stress, you will make those friends that know that now you're out of it. Maybe you need some your time, you need to relax. What can they do? So I think I found those people too that helped me stay indoors, but stay engaged with something and be still able to enjoy the experience. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Okay, switching gears to academics, Aanchal, can you share your academic highlights during Ross? Maybe some of the favorite classes and
Hmm.
electives.
Definitely. I think I loved most of my finance and strategy courses. And I'll go into more specifics. But finance, I had a knack of because I was from the industry. I knew I wanted to do some kinds of courses in that. So I picked the fast track in finance as one way to be dropping some of the core electives that you have to do and be able to take some advanced electives in that field because you hold that experience in the industry. So I picked that and was able to do something that I would have otherwise gotten to do in year second, but I saved some credits and did like there's corporate financial policy where I was thinking to think of like a CFO. How would they think about when something goes wrong or when something is right? Now, what do I do with the extra cash and things like that that I hadn't thought of till now? Like we don't think at those levels. So I think I really loved that course. My professor was amazing. I think Andrew, I'm forgetting the last name, but I loved that experience, I think. And then strategy wise, I did every single flavor of it that you could think of. So there's a core elective, but there's something like an advanced competitive strategy. And most of these are based on cases. So you read about different kinds of companies competing with each other, doing similar things or dissimilar things, what works, what does not work. And I remember in one of them, I just wrote a paper around Apple's entry into finance space. And my friend works at Goldman, and Goldman and Apple had actually partnered with them. And she was telling me about, oh, there's this thing that's not working. I was like, I exactly know about it. I wrote a paper on it. So it's so much fun to be reading what's happening currently because those cases are so much appropriate for the current times, are so much recent that these professors spend time writing in the current moment that it just makes so much sense of what's happening in the industry. So I think advanced competitive strategy and the core strategy were another one. Then CEO's class that I talked about. So really putting you into the C-suite every single week to think about how would they handle this problem? What should they be doing? And then people questioning them from the class. I think that was another great experience. And then think one more that I really loved was Ted London, this base of the pyramid class, which really talks about people that are most unprivileged with very meager income to be sustaining. What do they need from us? So I don't know if anybody has read those books around, there's something called Poor Economics, where they talk about that these people do not need money or charity, but rather business solutions that engage them are run by them. But we just provide the business knowledge or whatever is it lacking because it's not that they don't have anything to be doing things like that. So I think that was a very impactful class that I really loved, that changed the way I would think about creating some of these business solutions if I ever did. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. And you talked about being on the fast track for some finance courses, right? So do you take like a test to waive out of courses?
So there were summer courses for us. So we start in August, but in May and June they put you through some video lectures for the same. So that was another professor I really liked. I could not take any of his classes, but Gautam Kapoor, loved hearing from him in those courses, I think. So you just go through those tutorials, do some tests there, and then if you clear those through, you waive out of the course. Yes, and you can do the electives.
Okay, that's helpful because I
Yeah.
know of some people who are pursuing a second MBA. So I think that could be helpful
Yeah,
for them.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, super, super. And Achal, apart from the one or two names you've just talked about, who are the star professors at Ross? And, what are the most popular courses for everyone? The CEO's course is obviously one.
Yes, Mike Barger, he's amazing. I think when we won the CEO's challenge, he was sitting there behind and he was like, I feel like a proud father right now. He's very cool. He's very nice. I think Ted London is also amazing. He does a lot of social impact work, has also written a book. So that was pretty good. I love the class. That's another one. Andrew, I already named those professors, I think, which I like. One class that I missed, but I wanted to take was Andrew Hoffman. He does something called Management as a Calling. So that's not like a typical class, but more like retreats twice a year where you go out into the wilderness, live there for 3 days without your cell phones and laptops. And you're just talking about what's my calling from this degree rather than just creating profits and money for myself. What do I really want to be doing for the society? So I had signed up for it and I could not go because I was ill at that time. But that's one thing that is really interesting, that's picking a lot of pace there. So that's another good one. Like everybody will have their own favorites as to what they would want to do because there's so much that anybody can look at. But strategy and finance, since they were my focus, these were the ones that I can think of. And then there's another cool thing at Ross. They have this Tawzy Finance Center where, and the teacher that teaches that class is also very interesting and funny. So they have these Bloomberg and FactSet terminals where they teach you how to use them, how to create your own watch list and stuff, and give you access to them as a school. So I think that was another very cool thing that I got to do. Really loved that one. So yeah.
Okay, super. What experiential opportunities did you participate in?
I think everybody does the map experience for sure, but it's the first time that you're actually in a team that you don't know anybody from, and also working with an external real client where they have the solution and you're supposed to be creating a solution for them. Like they have a problem that has real data behind it, that needs real people to be interviewed. So it's a very unique experience that they have tried to pull off, and they do it so well year on year. So I think that was one of very good ones. So map is definitely one, and I can expand more on it.
It would be helpful if you could
Yeah.
expand on MAP because it's such a flagship experience.
Yeah. So I think mine was a social micro lending company for women specifically, which was so interesting and so much up my genre of like, this is the kind of work that I want to do. So step one, you have like 100 companies that you can choose from, rank them of what is the kind of project that you really want to do. And they try so hard and so good at putting you at least in your top three, if not your top choice in your teams. So you really get to work on what is the kind of thing that you can do. So you can filter it out based on the industry, based on the kind of problem statement, based on the kind of location. Some of them are international as well. So everything that you can think of, you filter them down, find those 10 that makes the more sense to you, and then just rank them and you get most of your top choices. Mine was my first choice. And what we were trying to do for them was, there were 3 different kinds of customer journeys in the lending space in terms of somebody just comes to them for tutoring as a woman, like how do I do finances for my business? Somebody's coming to them for like grants. That's another way of, in the US system, get some grants from the government in some form or some government institution in some form. So how can I apply for them? Who is eligible for them? And some then do like short-term loans from them. So these guys have their own pool of funded money that's come from various institutions, donors, or have earned over the years, or maybe it's just the founder's money that they loan out to people. So how do they engage people across all 3 so that they become repeat customers, was what kind of strategy we were trying to build. So we would interview people from different of these 3 journeys to see, what do you want? Why wouldn't you want to do some of the other journeys too with them? What is your pain point with them? Like, what are the different characteristics? So we created sort of personas across these three journeys. Like, what are typical customers looking for, and how can we bring them into other journeys as well, was what we did. So there was a lot of interviewing, customer surveying. We did a couple of data analysis, data crunching with whatever numbers they had, and then came up with some sort of recommendations and these final personas that we think made the most sense. And at the same time, engaged a lot, because you're now working with 6 strangers that are from your class, but you don't necessarily know them. So trying to build that camaraderie in yourselves. So going out for just ice cream eating, ordering lunch together. Because when decisions get tough in a room where everybody is equal and there's no said leader, how do you progress from there becomes a challenge. So to be knowing who's to step in, when to step in, creating out some roles, those kinds of chartering thing. I think those were all part of the experience, which are so much relevant even today when I go into consulting. And if there are like 4 people at the same level working together, who do I listen to? What do I do? Figuring those things out helps a lot.
Any other experiential opportunities that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. I did another class that was called Living Business Experiences, where it's a very similar one that you work with a different company that's more in its startup phases, like a Series A, Series B, those kinds of things. Those are not big established companies, and you try to help them solve a business problem. But here you work with people from across different schools. So I had a team where I had people from, I think, the meds department, the technology folks, data science folks, couple of different departments. Like it's a big 12 people, 13 people team where you have all these kinds of roles. And because MBAs are senior most, I think, in those teams. So we were put into more like lead different kinds of cycles and then prepare the next layer for the next term to be leading those cycles, I think. So that was a good mentoring opportunity as well. We worked with this company called 15 Seconds of Fame, which was more sports focused, and they were trying to get how do we get to more schools to be using our apps. So that kind of strategy was what we built for them. But that's another different experience from MAP, because MAP, you're working with everybody that's you're equal in terms of the degree that you're pursuing. Here you have so many juniors and different levels and different skills that you want to see where do you help people grow, but also be able to use their best skills forward. So I think that was another great experience that I had. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. For people who are interested in consulting, is there a specific way you would recommend that they structure their academic calendar, specifically in the first year as they're recruiting?
I wouldn't say in terms of, because most of your first year is usually core electives. There's nothing much that you can do about it. I think you start to get some wiggle room from from the spring winter term. And I would recommend people not stuffing more electives in there, because that's your prime recruiting season. That's one way to think about it. And then from your like the fall season, if there are courses that you can drop that you have taken, take that opportunity to do that, I think. But if it's something that you just think you know and maybe you don't want to do it, I wouldn't recommend, because it's very good experience and all classes are catered to all levels of knowledge that you come with. Unless you're like an expert and have done this day in and day out, I wouldn't recommend a CPA doing the accounting class. Otherwise, other than that, I wouldn't recommend messing up with what your calendar is. Second year, of course, you can experiment out a lot with your electives. You should do what you want to do. I wouldn't recommend like going out of the way to find some consulting courses, because you learn all of that on the job. You're being prepared for it even without you knowing it. So.
Okay, fair. And a follow up to that, for an international student recruiting for consulting, right? From the moment they get into Ross, how should they ideally structure their recruiting journey?
I think, and I tell this even to MBA ones that I came in, like just follow blindly what the consulting club is telling you. Do not lag behind, do not apply too much in there, because it's so well structured, tested so many years. They are so experienced people who learned the development center here that know what has to be done. Your MBA twos, I've seen that they bring the same curriculum to you year on, year out. So just keep up with the timelines that they are telling. If it's your week one, you want to get the resume done, just get that done. You don't want to be lagging on that. But like, do not think 4 steps ahead on the first day you want to start casing. That doesn't make sense. You don't need to do that. Don't overkill yourself. Don't run too fast, neither run too slow. I think that's just in one sentence. I would recommend just follow them. and use your brain where it's necessary, yes, but there are so many people to help you get people's opinions because they have done this, and then just follow the consulting club.
All right. And what are the steps involved in preparing to recruit for consulting? Like you just talked about two of them, right? Like
Yeah.
preparing your
Yeah.
resume and then casing. What else?
So I think you start with creating your resume. So you go through multiple rounds of iterations with the career development head. There are various peer coaches, MBA tools, and then you can do something with your peers also. But that's first activity. The next is networking. So really going to some of these events that these companies do, talking to those firm executives or whoever is available from the firm from your location of choice to be able to talk to them, maintaining those connections. And that grows organically, like not messaging them every day, but developing those connections. And then your third phase is really around casing. And that too happens in steps where you're first just given like a prompt and you just want to be thinking about it. If this is a business problem, how do you think about now solving it? Okay, if this is how you want to solve it and structure it, if I give you this data on top of it, now what do you want to do? How do you analyze charts would be your next step. Now, how do I do the hard math? Then you would come to, okay, how do I prepare a recommendation? So it's very well structured, and week on week, you're learning something new as a skill to be added on top of how do you case. So by the time you're on to casing, you're done with your resume, that's published for recruiters to be able to see. You're done with most of your networking. You know your office of choice. You have made good connections there. The recruiters know you. And now you're only focused on casing. And then that goes on to like November, December, and then January is when you have most of your interviews, by February, and you're done with internship recruiting by then. So start September, November, December, you're preparing for it, and January, February is when you're done with interviews.
Okay, super helpful. And can students get into specific practices when it comes to consulting firms? I know that generally people get in as generalists,
Yeah.
but in some cases, for example, with let's say a digital transformation, social impact, is it possible?
I think most of the firms do not specifically recruit. I know McKinsey does have its special practices if you want to. And I would only recommend doing that if that's something that you really, really want to do, because there's no like separate quota for you to be getting those. So going in as a generalist gives you more flexibility to explore because you don't know what you don't know. If you've done something all your life and you just sign up to do that again, you wouldn't know what all out is there in the industry, and consulting is one field that will let you explore that very easily. So if that's something, I would recommend going in through the generalist route. Most of the companies take that. A few might give you those options where they are very specific, and I'm trying to remember. There are more. The transformation one is another one. I'm trying to remember the company, but I'm not getting the name, where they do these partnerships too, so people can do where there is an option. But even when there are just generalist roles, I've seen people like for BCG coming in, they're very interested in climate and sustainability, and they just make it clear that this is what I'm interested coming in. So they pick locations accordingly, they talk to the right people accordingly, and they get put on similar cases from day one to be able to explore it.
Okay, so when you say pick locations accordingly, you mean where there's a higher concentration of cases?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and you can figure that out through your networking.
Yes, if there are like financial institutions, maybe make sense. New York is, or maybe San Francisco is where you would want to think about, depending on tech. San Francisco, maybe there's some hot pockets, like the big companies do cover it from across the world. They're very open after COVID to be working remotely from working anywhere, at least for some industry. Oil and gas in the Texas region, something like that makes sense.
Okay. And what led you to pick New York as your location?
I think I visited this city briefly a few years ago, and I just like the vibe and the pace that that city has. Maybe this is not for me when I'm like 40, 50, 60 years old, but I've lived in Bangalore for my work. I like the kind of people, the pace, the activities I could do there, and like everything just available within a 1 mile radius to be doing anything. And this city just gave me the vibe of that. So that was one reason. And then I think financial institutions was my background. That was what I wanted to explore more. So this city made sense to me. So I think both from a living perspective, I wanted to explore and be here for some time, and then just the industry too.
Fair. Can you talk a little bit about your internship? What did your day look like and what helped you receive a return offer? Or did you already get the internship and the full time together?
I think our year was the special one where they just did one rounds and gave you both offers at the same time. They do not do this anymore. So I was one of the lucky ones that got through at that time. So I already had the return offer. Now, when I joined as a consultant, I literally just called my first manager up from an internship. I was like, I don't think you made me do enough work. Like, I'm sweating so much now. So I always used to ask him, like, should I be doing more? Am I not doing enough? And he's like, no, you're doing just fine. No, but I think I worked on a financial institutions case at that time, and it was more like a strategy diagnostic for us to be evaluating some system of theirs from a technology perspective. How does it fare compared to its competitors? What are some of the benchmarks? What are some of the good practices in the industry? So all of these cases are divided into modules or work streams, however you want to think of it, and everybody works on one certain one that they're assigned to. So mine was more around getting industry benchmarks, talking to experts. So most of my day would be around talking and interviewing these experts. So these are blind calls. They just know we are some sort of consultants. We don't tell them who we are working for, but we just ask them questions around how would you do this in your company if you were to do this? What are some of the industry best practices to be doing this kind of function and things like that? And then just do some slide making after that in terms of filter out what the insights are and be able to put them down into slides that make sense. So my module was heavily qualitative in those senses, whereas some of the other folks were having some internal data around what are some of the KPIs, what are some of the statistics, what are some of the numbers that we have to achieve with these systems. So they would do like, what's the historical trend for this? What should the projections look out for this? What does the industry tell us to this? So there's more number heavy modules as well. And I was more focused on the qualitative parts during my internship.
Okay, understood. Now that you are working full time, right? Can you talk a little bit about what your typical day or week looks like and just talk about the process of getting staffed on cases as well?
So I've only done one project till now, till I've started into this company. And what we in this team tend to start off, there's a Monday morning or every day actually a check-in meeting at 9 that we talk about what's our plan for the day, what do we want to achieve today, what are our deliverables for the day, or maybe for the whole week. And then there's a checkout call at like 5 or 6 where we talk about, have we achieved what we talked about in the morning? Are there any blockers? How do we resolve them? And then is there anything more pending for the night? What do we want to get out of as before we like wrap work today? And Monday mornings, we are usually focused on what does our week look like as a perspective? Are there any key meetings? Are we talking to any stakeholders? What kind of prep do we need to do? Are we doing any export interviews? Do we have their questionnaires ready? What kind of slides have to go out? When do they have to go out? Who owns it? All these kinds of decisions are what gets discussed. And then within checkout, everybody talks about, this is what I'm working on. This is my blocker. And this is what my timelines look like. This is the kind of support I need from the team. And then everybody starts to go about with whatever their module requires them to be doing the whole day, taking calls, meetings, and getting good lunches, there's good food every day. So getting that, and then there's good coffee and getting that, and then checkout calls. And yeah, that's pretty much that. And in terms of staffing, when you come into the firm, your first case, so everybody gets assigned a staffer to themselves. So that's a member of the talent team that will work with you to identify what are your strengths, what are your interests, what would you like to do, and then find appropriate cases for you and reach out. So first case is usually staffed by them. And then you start to build your own network with people of who you want to work with, or maybe industries that you want to explore. So you reach out to people. Would not happen, I would say, for the first 6 to 9 months. It's not that easy to be making that network when you're just coming in, knowing nobody, or maybe few people from your internship. So the staffer helps you in those months, and then you start to build your own network and your own people that you want to work with.
Understood. And so you talked about the check-in, check-out meetings, right? Like, so those are happening every day?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And these are everything's in person, or is this virtual?
So I think it very much depends on the team, the kind of industry that you are in. So something like private equity team would want to be in person because it requires very quick pace of work. So they would be in the office every single day, versus some teams that do not require that much, have clients also that are remote most of the time. They could do like 2-3 days in the office and rest work from home. And Mondays and Fridays were what we used to work from home, like coming out of the weekend and getting into the weekend. People can be relaxed and be at home. And then Tuesday through Thursday, we would be in the office. And I've seen a couple of teams do like Monday, Wednesday, Fridays in the office, things like that. So yeah, depends on the team.
Yeah, there's some flexibility since COVID is what I'm hearing. And what about travel for you? So I guess you've been on this one project, so there's not been so much travel for you, I guess.
Yeah. And also New York as a location, I feel does not attract that much travel, because most of the big clients, their head offices, or at least some sort of office, are in New York. So it's just going from one borough to the other at max is what's going to happen. But I do see a lot of people coming from like Boston, Washington, Philly, depending on, because most of the clients' head offices are here. So a lot of people do fly into New York, but New York has lesser travel. I think that was another good reason for me to be picking this. I did not want to do the Monday through Thursday on a plane life.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's a huge advantage then. I
Yeah.
didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And actually, what's the current recruiting environment like? And how can international students better prepare themselves to thrive in this environment?
I think it's definitely been very uncertain, and it continues to be uncertain. And that's what making companies react to it in the ways that we are seeing it. But that does not mean that recruiting has like 100% stopped, or there are no jobs anymore. So just finding the right company for you, the right people for you, the way people would have worked to find the right school for themselves. I think finding the right company is a very similar job in terms of what are the kinds of people that would be interested in your growth, that you can see yourself working with and enjoying it. And you get to see that with interactions that you have with them. So you will start to find those bonds. Do not be worried about some branding names or anything like that. I would say once a consultant, you are into the industry, you are a consultant. Like you can move anywhere. So I won't worry about that. For internationals, I think just focusing on what makes you you, bringing that to consulting the same way you did for your schools, and then being able to find the right company that makes sense to you. I think just finding that right fit will get you out of all the turmoil that's happening to some extent.
Okay, fair. And actually, if you reflect back, what has been the impact of the Ross MBA on you personally and professionally?
I'd read this question and I was going to say probably I found my partner at Ross. So I got engaged and met him
Oh,
at Ross.
congratulations. That is so
Yeah.
fantastic.
He says, I am his biggest achievement out of Ross. And I was thinking, do I also say the same answer? That's one of the things. But I think that Ross has given me a lot of confidence in continuing to be who I am. I was worried when I came into Ross. I know I was talking to my career development officer in consulting, because a few of the firms had asked me, you are a data scientist, do you want to do like a tech focused role at the firm? And I was like, that's not what I'm coming from. I'm interested in finance and that's what I want to do. So is my profile not right for it? And he was like, no, you should be able to say that that's not what I'm looking for. It's good that you want to consider me for that, but you should keep confidence in what you bring as an industry experience, in your aspirations, in your learning ability. So just keeping that up, I think that gave me a lot of confidence on, I want to do finance, I want to do New York. Maybe people don't do it, but that's what I want to do. And with probably the right amount of determination, finding the right contacts, and genuinely liking something, I'll get there. I think that confidence is definitely something that's helped me a lot in professional and personal both settings. And then finding my partner, and then finding some really good friends to rely on, good times and bad, because we come at a time in our lives into MBA where everybody's pretty settled in the way who they are as a person. They're comfortable with it. They might not want to make as many new friends and might not adjust to a lot of people. And being able to find there and then some people that you feel like I relate to them. I would want to go to their weddings. I would want to play with their children, and that kind of experiences. I was able to build those. So I'm happy about that. I think that's another good personal thing that I got out of it.
Wow, sounds like a super enriching experience for you overall. One question I had about recruiting, which is like stepping back a little, right? But do pre-MBA internships or say in semester opportunities in consulting, do you think they act as positive indicators to consulting firms?
I think I always tell people to be doing what makes sense to you and not to use it as a thing to show off things. So if an internship in a VC before consulting or before coming into business school makes sense to you because that's what you want to do after business school, 100%. But I don't think a consulting firm is only looking for that, because you would have 4, 5, 10 years of experience of work before that. You already know how to deal with people in some certain industry that you're coming with. You already know how to solve problems. You already know how to think about problems, or coming up with new business strategies. You already know that in some shape or form. And that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for people who are already completely cooked in terms of what they want. They're taking you on because they feel your mind is fertile, can learn new things, can think new things. So do things that make sense to you, that enrich your experience as a professional, as a personal, and you might even want to take that time to be with your family, because you don't know how much more months or how many years after will you come to spend that time again. And in semester, you can do. Internationals have some restrictions in the first year, I think, and second year onwards you can. But I wouldn't personally recommend it in the MBA experience because, like I've been talking about, there's so much to do. And you would want to do those things. Like that's what you're spending so much money, so much time away from family for. The experiences, the events, clubs, friends, whatever you can think of, that's what makes this experience what it is supposed to be. So unless it's like once in a lifetime kind of job in a startup that you wanted to do, or in a big firm that you will not ever get to do, I don't think it's worth spending time there. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, very helpful. And just at the end, Aanchal, do you have any final advice for prospective applicants or incoming MBA students who are looking to become future global leaders?
Definitely. I think I don't want to repeat cliches, but I think being genuine and being yourself as the first go helps a lot. Like you'll see me, I'm so happy talking about it. And this is my natural sense when I'm talking. And this is how I talk to people, even when I meet prospective BCGers today or prospective process, or even if I meet my friends, that's how I talk because I'm excited about this. So find the school, the thing, the degree, the country that excites you, and you would feel happy doing it because you will be able to then show it whoever you're interviewing for, right? That will help you a lot. And then second is just being confident in what you have achieved in life. I think it's not such a common degree to be pursuing. It's not something that everybody does it. So even if you're thinking about doing it, you have the sense of why you would want to do it. That's a big achievement in yourself because you've come a long way from so many people now that you want to expand your horizons. You're putting yourself in an uncomfortable position and you're happy doing it. So you should be proud and confident about the skills you've got till now, the confidence that you've built till now, and just keep going with it. I think that will help you get anywhere that you want to be.
Okay, fantastic, amazing. And with that, Aanchal, I really want to thank you for your time. You've been fantastic, shared such nuggets that'll be very helpful for our listeners.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun talking about it.
Thank you. Likewise.